Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. From this video, I will discuss about the peritoneum and the subdivisions of the peritoneum as well as about the peritoneal cavity. So the video will be in two parts. First, I will discuss about the subdivisions of the peritoneum. So peritoneum is a thin but serous firm membrane. Actually, the peritoneum lines the inner aspect of the abdominal cavity. If we draw a abdominal cavity like this, and this is the inner lining of the abdominal cavity. This lining is formed by the peritoneum, and the peritoneum can be divided into two parts as parietal peritoneum and visceral peritoneum. So the parietal peritoneum is the one uh, which lines the abdominopelvic cavity. You can see in red color in this diagram. This red color one is the parietal peritoneum. You can see here is the diaphragm and the anterior abdominal wall, then the pelvic viscera is there, and the posterior abdominal wall, which is the vertebral column and the aorta. So this abdominal cavity, an aspect of the abdominal cavity is lined by the parietal peritoneum, which is in the red color. And then the visceral peritoneum is the continuation of the parietal peritoneum. You can see here you can see here it is the continuation of the parietal peritoneum, and here also you can see it is the continuation. Here also you can see it is the continuation of the parietal peritoneum. Then the visceral peritoneum is the peritoneal lining which lines the outer surface of the visceral organs. It can be completely lines the visceral organs or partially lines the visceral organs. You can see liver is not completely lines by visceral peritoneum, and here is the stomach. You can see the stomach is completely lined by the visceral peritoneum. Like that, the visceral peritoneum this visceral peritoneum is the one which suspend the visceral organs from the posterior abdominal wall. You can see because of this visceral peritoneum, this visceral organs are attached to the posterior abdominal wall. You can see how they are in the abdominal cavity in the separate places. And there are several folds. There are several folds of peritoneum. You can see here is also a fold which is a double fold. Here also you can see peritoneal folds. Those are the folds of visceral peritoneum which helps to suspend the viscera from the posterior abdominal wall. And those double layered peritoneal folds include greater omentum or the lesser omentum, and also there are mesenteries, mesocolons as well as ligaments. We call these names according to the different organs they attached. If it is attached to the liver, we call as ligaments. If it is attached to the stomach, we call as omentum. Then if it is attached to the colon, we call them as a mesocolon. Like that, we give different names to the visceral peritoneum. Then the function of the peritoneum. When we talk about the function, the peritoneal fluid is secreted by the lining epithelium, which keeps the surface moist and prevents the friction between adjacent viscera. The presence of the antibody producing cells in its submesothelial tissue helps in resisting the infections as well. The peritoneal fluid is rapidly absorbed by the mesothelium of the peritoneum. When we talk about the peritoneal cavity, you can see the yellow color one is the peritoneal cavity, and it can be divided into two major parts. Peritoneal cavity can be divided into two major parts as two major subdivisions as greater sac and the lesser sac. The two sacs are in communication with each other at the epiploic foramen. I will show you later what is the epiploic foramen is. Then the greater sac again can be divided into two as supracolic gutter or the supracolic compartment and infracolic compartment. By the by the transverse colon. By the transverse colon, greater sac divided into supracholic compartment and the infracholic compartment. Above is the supracholic and the below is infracholic. Cholic means the colon. The transverse colon is the one which divides this greater sac into two compartments again. And then uh, let's talk about the greater omentum first, because the greater omentum is the one which we see when the abdominal cavity is open. When we open the abdominal cavity, first we see the greater omentum. Actually, it protects the visceral organ. Before we see the visceral organs, we see the greater omentum. Actually, the greater omentum means the the peritoneal lining, which fills with the fatty layer. You can see the yellow color one is the greater omentum here. When we talk about the attachments of the greater omentum extends from the greater curvature of the stomach. Here is the greater curvature and it extends from the greater curvature of the stomach. Here, if this is the stomach and this is the greater curvature, and it extends below like this, and then it after it attached to the greater curvature of the stomach, it comes down and then again goes back towards the posterior abdominal wall. I will show you a clear diagram. Here you can see the stomach is there, and here the greater curvature, and the greater omentum attached to the greater curvature as two lines. Here you can see one and the other one is here. And both of these lines, or the peritoneal linings, comes downward and again they go back upwards. And you can see here is the transverse colon, and here this green color one, goes like this, and then towards the posterior abdominal wall. Here is the pancreas, and here is the anterior margin of the pancreas, and then again come back and then lines the transverse colon. This peritoneal lining we call as mesocolon. This is the mesocolon, and you can see the continuation, the greater omentum, and then it comes back here. It goes towards the posterior abdominal wall, but it not directly attached to the posterior abdominal wall. It attached to the anterior border of the pancreas, and then it again come back. Here it come back and it encloses the transverse colon, and it becomes the mesocolon. When it encloses the transverse colon, we call as mesocolon. Then it again go back here towards the posterior abdominal wall. Then here again it goes back and like this. Hope you clearly understood about how the attachment goes. As here I told you earlier, the greater omentum comes as two layers. Here one is blue line and the other one is green line. You can see by those two layers, one layer goes upwards like this and other one goes downwards like this. The blue color one goes upwards and green color one goes again downwards, and again it encloses the transverse colon. Here is how the peritoneal greater omentum, how greater omentum is formed. Earlier you see greater omentum is like a fatty pad. So fat deposition is in between those two layers. Here also you can see the greater sac and lesser sac. Here is the lesser sac. This area is the lesser sac. This area is the lesser sac. And the other rest, this is the greater sac. Now you know what is the greater omentum what is the transverse mesocolon. And let's see what is the lesser omentum is. Lesser omentum is also a double fold of peritoneum which extend from the liver to the lesser curvature of the stomach. Here you can see the liver, and here is the liver, and here is the stomach. You can see very clearly. So the lesser omentum is the one which extend from the liver to the stomach. Here you can see this part is the lesser omentum. And at this lesser omentum, attachment of the lesser omentum to the liver is discussed in another video. And now you know about the greater omentum, transverse mesocolon, and the lesser omentum. Let's see what is the mesentery is. Mesentery is also a fold of peritoneum that suspends the small intestine or the jejunum and the ileum from the abdominal wall. The parietal peritoneum, which is in continuous with the lower layer of the transverse colon above, is reflected as the right layer of the root of mesentery. And this layer covers jejunum and the ileum and returns to the posterior abdominal wall as left layer of the mesentery. The line of reflection of mesentery is the root of mesentery. Here you can see how the continuation of the transverse mesocolon, and it comes back along the posterior abdominal wall, and then it encloses the jejunum and ileal loops, and then go back towards the posterior abdominal wall. Actually, this is the mesentery, and how the root of mesentery is formed. Here also you can see the intestinal loops, how it is covered by the visceral peritoneum or the mesentery, and this is the root of the mesentery. I will show you how it forms. Here also you can see here is the small intestine. Root of mesentery is here. It extends from the duodenojejunal flexure here. It extends from the duodenojejunal flexure to the ileocecal junction, and it is an oblique line. It is an oblique line. Then we will see peritoneal tracing in male pelvis and the female pelvis. In male pelvis, you can see this is the peritoneal cavity, and then this is the parietal peritoneum. Here you can see the bladder. It goes in the superior surface of the bladder. Then it comes like this. Then it encloses the halfway of the rectum like this, and then go back. Here, this is the sigmoid colon, and then here. Here you can see it forms the rectovesical pouch by the peritoneal lining. Rectovesical means, recto means rectum here, and the vesicle means bladder. In between rectum and bladder, you have the rectovesical pouch. And then in females, here is the peritoneal lining in females, the pelvic mesocolon. Here you can see the bladder, then the uterus, then the sigmoid colon and the rectum. Here is the peritoneal lining, comes in the superior surface of the bladder, and then it goes in the anterior aspect of the uterus, and then superior, then towards the posterior, then in the rectum, anterior surface of the rectum, then posterior abdominal wall. Here it forms two pouches. In between bladder and the uterus, you have the vesico-uterine pouch. Vesico means bladder, uterine means uterus. In between bladder and the uterus, vesico-uterine pouch. Here is the recto-uterine pouch. In between uterus and rectum, you have the recto-uterine pouch. Next, we will see another important thing, that is the window which we open into the lesser sac. When we in the greater sac, and then we open into the lesser sac. That is like a window. We have to know about the boundaries of the epiploic foramen. Here, this is a cross section or the transverse section in the level of epiploic foramen. That means at the level of 12th vertebrae. Here you can see the liver, and here you can see the stomach. And here is the greater sac, and here is the lesser sac. In this picture, you can see a black arrow, which we enter from the greater sac to the lesser sac. It is the epiploic foramen. Here also you can see the epiploic foramen and the lesser sac. You are now in the you are in the greater sac, and then you have to enter in this area. In this area, here is the window, the epiploic foramen, and this is the lesser sac. Here is the clinical importance of the epiploic foramen. This maneuver is called as the Pringle's maneuver. And you can see the lesser omentum and the greater omentum. You can see the index finger goes towards the lesser sac through the epiploic foramen. Now you know what is the epiploic foramen is. So let's see the boundaries. The free margin of the lesser omentum with its three contents, namely the portal vein here, portal vein, bile duct, and the hepatic artery, forms the anterior boundary of the epiploic foramen. Then the inferior vena cava forms the posterior boundary of epiploic foramen, and the caudate process of the liver forms the superior boundary of the epiploic foramen. It is the superior boundary, and the first part of the duodenum is the inferior boundary. From this diagram, you can see the superior boundary and the inferior boundary. Superior boundary is here, the caudate process of the liver, and then the first part of the duodenum is here. It is the inferior boundary of the epiploic foramen. You can see how the three structures, the portal vein, bile duct, and the hepatic artery, are in the free margin of the lesser omentum. Hope you understood about the peritoneum and the peritoneal folds and the subdivisions of the peritoneal cavity from this video. About the mesenteries, mesocolon, then the lesser omentum, greater omentum, and the two subdivisions. So from my next video, I will discuss about the subdivision. So thank you for watching.